Imagine world suddenly plunged into an ice age. Outside, temperatures have dropped to a steady minus 60 degrees C. In such conditions, heat and food have become the most valuable resources in the frozen concrete jungle of South Korea. The survivors initially try to survive together, but quickly realize that there weren't enough resources for everyone. And then a real war broke out in the cold corridors of apartment buildings. But amid all this chaos, there is one guy, Hang Fong, who is fearless in his fortified base with heat, girls, and plenty of food. He is a regressor who not only went back in time before the apocalypse began and prepared himself properly, but also gained superpowers that allow him to clone and increase the size of food. He didn't stop there and later built himself a real, fortified base with heat, greenhouses, and even a sauna. So how did it all begin? Let's find out. The transmission cuts off into silence and is replaced by the roaring voice of someone calling out Han Fong. The guy is making his way to open the door while quivering in the cold. Peeping through the hole, he discovers that it's actually his crush, Hyona, who can't stand being in the cold and can barely talk. He opens the door without hesitation to see if she's doing all right and quickly invites her inside. In an unexpected turn of events, Hyona leaps up to kiss him, much to Han Fong's shock and amazement. She's out here putting an effort in the kiss because by the end of it, bro is at a loss for words and can't describe what's gotten into her all of a sudden. Keep in mind, she was supposed to be his crush, so the dude is probably feeling like a Jiga hat on the inside for finally scoring a win. It's at this moment Hona confesses her feelings, stating how she's always loved him. After descending balls deep into a terrifying apocalypse, she has begun to understand that someone like him truly cares about others. To sell her point even more, Hona makes him touch her body so that he can sense her racing heartbeat, stating that she's ready to do anything with him. And yes, that's the honey trap that our guy ends up falling for. Because while he's busy out here imagining the birds and the bees, Kiona doubles down on rubbing her thigh between his legs, causing him to get even more lost and careless in his feelings. He also shares his feelings right back, stating that while she truly means the world to him, it doesn't make sense for them to behave this way right now. Hyona is an excellent manipulator because she tells our boy to close his eyes so that he can enjoy the process. Full of joy, he closes his eyes, questioning what's going to happen next. He's probably got the excitement of a child while this is happening. But then, well, dude's first kiss with his crush is followed up by his skull getting bashed by her bastard boyfriend. A heavy smash against his head leaves his body in a puddle of blood. Poor guy is quivering in pain while Hyona expresses her terror. She wasn't expecting them to actually murder someone in cold blood. But her boyfriend reminds that she can't play innocent when from the beginning they both understood this guy had to go. They weren't going to spare Han Fong. Now when everyone in this world is out for themselves in the apocalypse, instead of caring about him, they express their happiness having discovered Han Fong's resources and loot. As for the nice guy who tried to show someone kindness, well, he's eating right now, drenched in his own blood and unable to move. The clinging of death succumbs to him, and the last thing he sees is Hyona getting excited with her man. His demise happened all because of one ruthless woman's planning. So, in his final moment, he makes a vow. If he's given a second chance, he's going to stop being someone else's toy to be used and discarded. As his consciousness fades to black, the terrifying feeling is replaced by a shimmer-warm light, drawing him near and near. At first, he thinks it's a way for him to get into heaven. But then his innocent expectations are tarnished as his spiritual body experiences a world of pain and bursts into 100 pieces. By the end of that traumatizing sequence, he jolts up awake from his bed. His face is full of sweat, and he questions his surroundings. Han Feng was just fading away just a few seconds ago, and now he's okay. It's not just that he's fine. The world is fine, too. There's no signs of an apocalypse. The sun is warm even after 30 minutes of waiting. It's the kind of warmth that he never expected to see again. From a calendar, Han Feng checked and learned that today was June 28th. The date of the apocalypse in the original timeline is supposed to start on July 15th. This means that he had a post-death regression that led him to arrive back in time just a few weeks before the apocalypse. The feeling of shock, amazement, and confusion all show up on his face. He clearly wasn't expecting to be reborn, but this time he's returned with a few changes. Let's talk about that glowing red hand for a second. Ever since Han Feng regained consciousness, this guy's hand just can't stop glowing red. He tries waving it off, and yet nothing happens. To describe the sensation, the glow feels warm and it doesn't hurt or anything. At first, he thought that his mind was playing tricks on the guy, but then Han Feng sneezed out of nowhere, leading to yet another intriguing development. The same hand that was red a second ago is now glowing a bright green, adding even more to his confusion. But there's a difference this time because Han Feng actually loses control of the magnitude of his glowing power causing it to get even bigger. In a state of hurry and panic, he stands there looking lost at his newfound problem. The radiating glow out of nowhere starts shrinking in his hand. The behavior of the glowing effect is odd and different from the red one. Taking a seat, he expresses his sudden drop in energy. Yeah, ever since the green one activated, his body has been more drained than ever. Frustratingly waving his hand in anger, Han Fong comes to a sudden realization. This is exactly happening just like those awesome mana stories he likes to read. In the same fashion, the main character is reborn, and this time with overpowered abilities. So, in order to test his own, bro pulls out a damn knife, hoping for some miracle to happen. But funnily, nothing goes his way as the blade doesn't react, and he's standing there looking like a clown. Not to mention, his tummy is grumbling because of the energy loss he experienced. Checking his fridge turns out to be a waste of time because there's just nothing in there. The situation is growing more troublesome for him than he thought. He has to eat at least something, or he's going to risk going unconscious again. An idea comes to mind when he spots a jar of roasted soybeans, the only snacks that could be feasibly used in the apocalypse. Even though it's not a proper meal, it's filling enough for now. Reaching for one of the beans, he pops one in his mouth. But the moment he does that, the soybean explodes into a fully grown bean plant. His radiating, glowing green hand is gone, and so is his exhaustion. Han Fong doesn't get if it had something to do with the soybeans, or if it's something he did. He grabs and pops open one of the bean sprouts, amazed to discover that this is his new power. Han Fong is impressed and wants to study it intensely. But with his current state, he has a couple of issues to take care of firsthand. First up is stocking up on supplies, so he doesn't go short during the apocalypse. To the supermarket he goes. In the next scene, he's navigating through a busy crowd, all of them lost in their thoughts and chattering about. Han Fong is confused and collects his thoughts. So far, he's got two types of radiating hands, and the green one is known to be more unstable, causing him added effects of exhaustion. Then there's the last part, perhaps the most interesting of the bunch. The moment he touched the soybeans with his glowing hand, they became proper bean sprouts. He still can't figure out the specifics of his power, causing his frustration. While he's lost in thought, a familiar voice graces his ears. Hyona, the same that betrayed him in his previous life, is here to see him. She's drop dead-ad gorgeous, but that's the thing. Getting involved with her is literally going to drop you 6 feet under the ground. Han Fong is pretty shocked to run into her again like this. A little more background on his crush. Lee Hyona has been his long-lost crush for 3 years straight. He played every trick in the book to get her to like him back. But deep down our boy knew he was just a backup, if anything. And now, after what happened to him, after the way she deceived him and got him murdered in cold blood, he is pissed. Rage is filling up his body. But he's not the type to go ballistic on someone considering his situation of being reborn. Han Fong assures himself and calms him down, hoping to take his revenge properly some other time. For now, he's got some supplies to gather. Hyona shows concern for the guy, waving her hand in an effort to grab his attention because he appears spaced out. Trying his best to maintain politeness with her, he praises Hyona for being so beautiful that it stunned him for a bit. She calls him a smooth talker in return and thinks that it's a good opportunity to invite him out to go shopping. But even with her attempt, the girl gets straight up rejected as he moves past Hyona like she's not even worth paying attention to. This gives her a reality check so hard that she's lost for words. The reality is Han Fong fully understands that she's only being so kind as to invite him so that she can use him as a personal bank for her own groceries. He's done being someone else's pet, so that won't happen anymore. The Waldemar Shopping Plaza is known to be the most well-towed supermarket in the region. In the original timeline, the moment the Arctic apocalypse began, this place was cleaned up and emptied up in a single night. It's still unknown who managed to rob it like that. But for now, Han Feng's objective is to stock up as much as humanly possible. Being intelligent, he actually discovered a survival guide list to get all the stuff he needs. Stuff like food, winter clothing, medicine, necessities, fuel, and a whole bunch of other useful items. Well, while he's got a huge shopping list, there comes a second problem. Bro doesn't have enough money to do while he's sulking. The guy receives a sudden message proving him eligible to grab a giant loan of 170,000 yuan for this year. It's just a lottery ticket he needed after all. Who the hell is going to repay debt during the apocalypse anyway? And so, using all of the loan apps he could find on the internet, Han Feng began twiddling his fingers, making sure he got loans from everywhere. The scene switches to Hyona, who is pretty damn frustrated with the way he treated her today. This is a stuck-up who can't get over the fact that her personal S refused her like that. It tells you a lot about her personality, but I'm sure more didn't need to be said after she got the guy killed in his previous life. Hyona is cursing Han Feng for being a pathetic loser without a car and doesn't expect to be nice to him anytime in the future. Speaking of the devil, A car drives up to her and honks at her. Hyona's reaction is one of shock when she discovers that the driver is actually the same guy she was talking about. It's Han Fong. He drops by to talk to her, stating how he purchased the vehicle just now. After all, his father has been making a ton of money in the States, so it's only natural he sent over some cash for him to have fun with. He also tells her that he was busy taking his father to the airport. This fact actually cools her down, making her think that she was turned down because he had an important job to attend. She apologizes for asking him out during an important time. In usual Gaslighter Pro Max Girl Edition fashion, she acts cute while crying and complaining about how cruel he was. Han Fong's reaction is interesting to say the least. First, he calls her foolish and then grabs her close, stating that he won't ever ditch someone like Hyona, as she's far too important to him. The arrogant chick thinks that she scored the lottery, so she plays on his feelings again, hoping to manipulate him by saying that she feels the same way about him. She recommends watching a movie with him and having some nice dinner. But right as she's saying these things, our boy says, "Peace thee out," and is already tending to his luggage. He complains about how busy he is with the stuff he's got to take back. Even Hona is stupefied as to why he bought so much stuff out of the blue. In return, Han Fong plays it cool and says it's because he wanted to. To raise her expectations, he tells her that he also got Hyona a present. Feeling all happy and bubbled up, she decides to head home, hoping to see it later. As she's leaving, Hyona's got a really satisfied look on her face, thinking she killed that. But she doesn't know that our boy also shares the exact same look on his face. They're both manipulating the other. And it just so happens that he is never going to let out the secrets of his stockpile. It's the one ticket he's got of surviving this damned apocalypse. When that moment comes, when the world sinks into despair and destruction, Han Feng fully intends to take his revenge on the bastard who killed him, as well as Hona. He also confesses that it's making him eager to enjoy the apocalypse this time. Yeah, something tells me Hona is about to eat, and it's going to be really damn satisfying when that happens. The day of the apocalypse is only 2 weeks far. That day, immense heavy snow will cover the planet, and the temperatures will drop close to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Over the course of the next month, all temperatures will experience a gradual drop, reaching the likes of minus 70 degrees, and the world will be fully covered in snow. Going outside will become physically impossible. And that's the reason food is so important. He's brought all the stuff back to his apartment, fully packing it with proper covering so that no one suspects him of hoarding supplies. For the most troublesome supplies, he's going to make sure to move them at night when no one's around. Speaking of the apocalypse, a secondary issue will come in the form of power supply. With its instability, fuel is going to be necessary, and it just so happens that Han Feng has purchased a year's worth of fuel to make sure nothing goes wrong. To combat his next problem, he knows that the heating systems cannot function anymore. So, he brought a construction crew to alter his house properly, adjusting it so that everything is reinforced and resistant against the apocalypse to come. Finally, he's made up a dedicated room for supplies and inventory so that nobody suspects him and that he can access anything whenever he wants. By the time he wrapped up all of his preparations, July 14th was already upon him. Now, there was only one day left before the temperature annihilated itself to an uncontrollable degree. With all of his preparations finished, the final item on his checklist is to study his superpower. In order to get out of this winter apocalypse without freezing to death, even Han Feng knows that relying on his supplies won't be enough for him to survive. And it's here when his plant-based powers will come into play as a beacon of hope. In front of him are the same soybeans that he actually managed to grow using his own powers. And now it's time for the taste test. The issue is he's yet to figure out the main trigger for his ability. But anyway, Han Feng decides to take a spoonful and, despite his fears, hopes that this food is edible at the least. After finishing up half the plate, it's safe to conclude that these beans aren't producing any terrible effects. This means that he can safely produce and eat food using this power. But the tricky part is figuring out how or what makes his hand glow like that. Based on his experimentation, he's only tried his ability on soybeans. So, he inspects his fridge, hoping to find some other veggies to try it on. Noon is quickly followed by the evening. A drowsy and weak Han Feng opens his eyes, questioning if he ended up passing out just now. He's holding broccoli in his hand, and the kitchen is splattered with vegetables. He can't even think properly because of the exhausting effects of his own power. That's the only drawback so far. Eating the same soybeans from earlier, he comments on how this way he successfully managed to learn something new about his ability. Let's talk about what went down right before he went unconscious. He ordered a bunch of stuff down to test his power and use it on a different set of plants. Here's the strange part. Some of the plants were completely non-reactive. But as for others, seeds, for example, grew into proper plants, just like what he experimented with the soybeans. There's also a third category. Some of them detonated right in his hand, which remains to be a mystery as to why. Han Fang also discovered the charged substances that shared the appearance of coal upon their detonation. But it's a good thing because these same substances can be stored and later reused to provide warmth. With this, he successfully found a way to keep himself warm in the harsh apocalypse to come. Excited, he concentrated on honing his powers and experimenting on a few more. While he was failing at first, when Han Feng tries focusing his power, the magical effects are prominent, giving him what he wants. The guy was deprived of energy and went down on the floor. Back to the present, he appears to be really confused about the logic of his own power. Some plans work, others don't. It's hard to find what works and what doesn't. Still, from this experience, he's realized the key part of the trigger. It's actually imbued into his consciousness. So he tries meditating on an ethereal experience where he is one with nature. An experience that connects his mind and body all the same. The fruits of his imagination end up becoming successful, because right after opening his eyes, Han Feng is satisfied to discover his glowing green hand. This confirms his suspicion that his ability is linked to his consciousness. To test it out even more, he tries his ability on a bunch of meat for good measure. Poor guy finds himself disappointed when it doesn't work on meat, because that would mean he's got to live off of plants for the rest of his life. Even after concentrating and begging his powers to work, nothing happens. This makes him question his thoughts again. Remember his meditation technique? When he does that, he experiences two unique colors, one being red and the other green. And so far, he's only experimented with green. So this time, he closes his eyes shut, hoping to connect his mind to his second ability. To his shock, his hand starts glowing red and affects the meat, turning it into a disgusting spiky blob that is barely recognizable anymore. Feeling so disgusted by the effects, he tosses the meat on the ground and approaches it slowly for another inspection. Han Feng pinches the meat and then grabs it again, questioning if the meat reacted to his red radiating light. It also seems like the meat was cooked properly, which begs the question if the red light is only responsible for heating stuff up. Inspecting his hand again, he starts to realize something. It's not that the meat was cooked. No, it's the opposite. This thing is actually reverting back to a process of disintegration. From this revelation, he's found a discovery. The green light speeds up the evolutionary process, and the red light slows it down immensely, reverting it into disintegration. In an effort to combine the two, he clasps his hands together with the meat. A burst of yellow forms, and the same meat turns into a larger slab than ever before. But that makes him question what happened to the soybeans that he also had in his hand. They disappeared, which probably means they merged with the meat in some way. Han Feng is really amazed by the output of his own powers, as after further inspection, he comes to the conclusion that the meat is the freshest he's ever seen. He's excited and wants to try it out one more time. But his luck isn't so kind to him, because bro ends up failing so bad that everything turns to black. He's slamming his hands on the floor in frustration, but eventually settles with patience. There's lots of time for him to experiment with his powers. He's happy that he got to make a whole bunch of different discoveries in just one day. If only he can master this ability to its fullest. Bro thinks he's going to become Superman and stand at the top of the world. But then the idiot realizes that food isn't the only thing that's necessary to save his life. Right now, he needs a weapon to protect himself from other humans. Right as he's thinking of going out to buy a weapon, the realization dawned on him. The apocalypse has begun. Just like last time, the world is experiencing an absurd amount of snow in July. He goes out regardless, believing that it's necessary to find a gun before temperatures reach minus 45 degrees. At the same time, he can't exactly buy a gun when it's illegal in the country. As he's busy in thought, he sees a broccoli hair punk ranting about how he's the younger brother of Lao Wang from the Shay Gang leader group. You know, the typical my brother's got more money than you tactic for winning petty arguments. Han Feng actually recognizes this clown from somewhere, thanks to his shitty fashion style and all. The funniest is how the people have decided to dub a name for this guy, calling him Homeless Joe. Let's talk about Lee's, or Homeless Joe, who lives in the same neighborhood as him. The guy's known to be a contractor who has networks with everyone around. People come around asking him what's up and what's going on. And he acts like he's the busiest dude in the block about how he's so busy dealing with his projects with his big brother. Bro doesn't even have a job, and he's always seen whining on his phone, pretending like he's got millions and millions on a project to spend some time on. Seeing this guy, Han Feng wonders if the idiot can help him get the weapon he needs. He greets Homeless Joe and pretends to know him for a while. So, the thing is, this guy doesn't really know our boy at all. Han Feng pretends to be Sure Ao Han, taking advantage of his pride and acting like they're long-lost friends who should remember each other. The homeless idiot gives into the bait and apologizes for not remembering, especially when he's got so much work to do. Han Feng checks his surroundings and quickly closes in on the punk, explaining his entire situation. When he's done explaining, Homeless Joe experiences a jolt of shock, questioning what the hell this dude needs a gun for. At this point, Han Feng is at a loss for words. Before he can even whip out a proper excuse, the blonde punk warns him that guns aren't something to be taken lightly, because they're illegal. Even though he's got connections that can get him weapons, that doesn't mean Homeless Joe is in the mood to get into some kind of dangerous business. Han Feng clarifies his situation, stating that he needs it for self-defense because some people have a grudge against him. He talks about a made-up story of how he ran into a guy on his way to work. They were both on a bike, and that man carelessly spat in his face. Of course, it pissed him the heck off, so he confronted the clown and started beating the crap out of him for everyone to watch. After humiliating him, he left the man to his way. The man actually held a grudge and told him that he'd return with his buddies. And so, the very next day, Bro got destroyed by the entire gang. They were clowning on him and roughing Han Feng top to bottom. After that beat down, he's been wanting to have a self-defense weapon to protect himself. Luckily, Homeless Joe is sympathetic for his story and makes a huge deal that spitting on someone is definitely a step too far. He thinks this kind of behavior should be punished, but Han Feng is starting to think that maybe this guy ended up missing the damn point of his complaining. Still, Homeless Joe wraps his arm around him like a guardian angel and promises to save the day. He's going to make his call to his big brother, and everything will be sorted out. Han Feng is glad that things are going his way. Homeless Joe recommends they take the boss because his luxurious car is being serviced right now. Han Feng is okay with that, showing Homeless Joe that he's got a vehicle for them to work with. As they're driving their way, Homeless Joe is shocked and asks about the price of the car. Our boy reveals that it cost him $700,000, which appears to be a pretty good deal in his eyes. Bro is out here snapping pictures like he's some kind of Instagram heartthrob. The hilarious part is that he captions it as if the SUV is his own. Speaking of the big brother, he talks about his punks are out chilling with a fire, commentating on the absurd weather conditions. Han Feng's car stops by, and Homeless Joe pops right out. The guy is out here acting smug, and the rest of his boys can't believe that Homeless Joe's got his own SUV now. And this guy is such a slimeball that he even tells them he bought it for $700,000 of his own pocket. Han Feng is left with the impression that Homeless Joe is seriously quite bold for saying something like that in front of the owner of the vehicle. In the next scene, the punk brings Han Feng to his boss. As you can guess from a gang leader, dude's got tattoos all over his body. He's displeased to see his brother here and immediately shows the blonde punk the door. To that, Homeless Joe puts all the pressure on Han Feng, stating that his friend over here wants to buy a gun. The gang leader is surprised at first and gives our boy a mean-ass look. Han Feng is terrified, while the boss is a bit annoyed that they came all the way here in search of one lousy gun instead of something more interesting by comparison. The boss tells his lackey to fetch a handgun, which is tossed over to Han Feng for a price of $6,000. However, our boy isn't in the mood to play around with tiny dick pistols. Nah, he's here planning to go full John Wick mode and requests a longer weapon with a scope. The boss is alarmed by the kid's audacity and confronts him for demanding a got-him sniper rifle. He reminds Han Feng that he isn't here in a position to negotiate or search around, as if this were his own shopping mall. Yep, the boss is a stuck-up guy who is going angry for no reason. That's where Homeless Joe and his stories come to the front. He whips another one of his stories again. This time, it's about Han Feng's wife who cheated on him 3 times. By the end of that storytelling session, the boss throws up a furious tantrum, feeling rageful on our boy's sake. The ridiculous stories are movie material from the looks of it. Anyway, the boss agrees to the request of a sniper rifle at last, stating that it's still going to take a few days. Han Feng is grateful that his request is being tended to. Chain Jingzi, the underling, is told to arrange a semi-auto for him as well. The boss has actually decided to take pity on him and has thrown in a free gun as a gift for the guy. Han Feng is truly starstruck when he sees him offering the handgun without any cost. Returning his gratitude, our boy decides to slip up an important piece of information to the gang. He talks about how he's friends with the government and how the weather conditions are only going to get worse from here on out. This means it's best to stock up on supplies quickly because they will run out soon. This time, Han Feng maintains an air of seriousness in his gaze, adding on to the weight of his advice. The boss agrees to take his advice, and that's how they ended up concluding the meeting with the boss. Returning back, Homeless Joe talks about how he handled that meeting like a pro mediator. He also thinks that it's good that his brother was in a pleasant mood today. Han Feng is really grateful and even hopes to buy him a bunch of cigarettes. Homeless Joe puts up an act of goodness at first, but then eventually caves into his offer. The funniest thing is how he's requesting 8 cartons full of cigarettes for the job, thinking that it should be an easy request. While he's ranting about, Han Feng is focusing on his checklist. He's got everything he needs for the apocalypse now, and the rest of the time will be spent studying his abilities. The only thing he's got to solve is how to work around his food troubles, and then it will be all smooth sailing from there. Right as he's confidently going about his plans, Bro slips right in front of homeless Joe and takes a really bad fall. Hanfong's leg is in shambles as he quivers in pain. Homeless Joe doesn't even know what the hell happened so suddenly. Our boy has strong suspicions that he probably broke his leg. He hands Joe the keys to help drive them to the hospital. Staring at him in silence, the blonde punk shamefully reveals that he doesn't even have a driver's license. So instead, he's got to take the old school approach. The punk tries to help our boy lean on his side. But the scene is so damn depressing that Hanfong orders a taxi to avoid the torture. In the next scene, we're at the hospital. In the receptionist area, John, the head nurse, is working the night shift and observes how the snow is only getting heavier with every hour. Suddenly, she receives an emergency call to come to the hall as they're short on staff. By the way, our boy really did end up breaking his damn leg. He's at the hospital, devastated to receive the report of his fracture. An hour of observation is necessary before he can leave with his meds. He planned for everything just for a random factor to knock everything out the window. Brotherly bids him farewell, stating that he's got a bunch of deals to take care of because of his super busy schedule and all. Well, that brings Hanfong back to square one. He's all on his own, and this time he's got a bad leg to take care of too. The hospital is swarmed with people. There's a sudden uprise in patients because of the insane weather conditions and alarming temperatures. It only shows how bad the situation is going to get outside in a few weeks. Hanfong is busy waiting for his medicines, but the queue is just way too long. He spots the pretty head nurse in the distance who is currently helping around by checking the patient's pulse. She's quite reliant in the hospital, so the doctors and other nurses are happy to make use of her. While she's doing her business, it knocks the wind out of our boy. Hanfong is swooned and fails to believe that someone can be a head nurse at such a young age. She's also extremely kind to every patient, not to mention her adorable looks from top to bottom. Yep, he's sing again, but this time for a different lady. While he's admiring her looks, an old man requests for her aid, and she comes rushing to see him. He tells her that his back is suddenly hurting, but Jinayon can't help but remind him that they're already short-staffed, so it's going to take a while to take his request. The real goal of this sleazy old man is to take advantage of the head nurse. He slips a camera just below her legs to take a photo while she's clueless in tending to the request. She promises to get back to him with an x-ray when they're less overwhelmed. But the old geyser doesn't stop there. He goes on full PDF file mode and grabs a hold of her body. The naive head nurse still doesn't suspect anything and assures him that a proper physician will be here soon enough to examine the patient properly. But here's the issue. The old geyser doubles down and cops a feel to the hospital's finest bakery. Before he can pull more, our boy throws his damn crutch in his face, making him fall to the ground. The head nurse is alarmed and questions if the old man is okay, while Hanfong apologizes for not knowing how to use a crutch. Yes, because when you don't know about something, you throw it right at someone with full speed. Hanfong acts like he's checking on the old man's phone right as the old geyser shouts at him to stop. Our boy spots the picture in his gallery and gets pissed. He can't believe that this bastard not only snapped a photo of the nurse, but also had the gall to touch her like that. He confronts him at once, threatening to call the security on him to have the old geyser escorted to his cell. After all, it would make for one less annoying patient in the hospital, especially one who is there to take advantage of others. Also, Hanfong is in no mood to return the phone, promising to release the report on social media if he catches the creep pulling stuff like this ever again. Unable to do anything, the old man runs away in frustration. Yes, the same guy who was having back problems 1 second ago can suddenly sprint faster than light right out of the hospital. Even the head nurse is at a loss for words with how fast he ran. Meanwhile, Hanfong is left with the impression that some people are truly at the height of naivety in their world. He shows her the photo and points out how the guy had ill intentions from the beginning. Hanfong is okay with her handling the situation and even hands her the phone to report to the police. Jean is really happy and retrieves the device, but she's also got an alarming question. Wasn't Hanfeng's ankle injured? And that reminds him he's just fractured his damn leg and acted purely out of adrenaline. So, this realization is when the pain really sinks in as he shouts in pain. A while later, she quickly has him bandaged up properly. Hanfong luckily doesn't feel much pain anymore. The head nurse is really grateful to him and promises not to let any other people take advantage of her. But while she's saying that, our boy's foot is being driven up right into her two personalities. Hanfong is under the impression that this girl isn't going to learn anytime soon. Jean is called again for her duties, so she clumsily runs away, reminding our boy to return after a week for a proper checkup. Hanfong internalizes that unfortunately he will never be able to see her again because of what will happen in 1 week's time. He leaves with that depressing thought in his mind. The following day, the weather conditions take a turn for the worse. News reports of heavy drops in temperatures are being sprung all over the world. Even Dubai and Egypt are receiving heavy snowfalls, which is unheard of. The experts ranging from 46 countries have come to rush an immediate meeting to discuss what's truly going on. According to these experts, the severe cold is only temporary and will break after a few days. Still, the people are warned to stay inside and follow proper procedure to stay comfortable. By the way, Han Fong appears undisturbed in his modified room. He's got a heater with endless warmth, and he's got nothing to fear. Honestly, the news keeps talking about how the disaster will pass, but he knows that it will never happen. It's just a lie to control the reactions of the public. It's pure, and it makes him feel like a clown believing in them the first time around. But this time, things are different. He's ready, really ready. He's fully loaded out with stocks, and his heating system is up and running. For now, there's practically nothing left to bother him. The building group chat is actually going crazy, talking about how insane the cold is getting and how they can't manage to stay warm here. The interesting thing about this group chat is that one anonymous person flat out reveals that the Ice Age apocalypse is about to begin and that the snowstorm is something caused within the Earth itself. The messages shock Han Feng because nobody is supposed to know about this information just yet. Hang's mind instantly registers this random mysterious dude as someone he should definitely be wary of. After all, being the protagonist of the story, Hong Feng's supposed to be the only one who knows about the upcoming apocalypse. The once happy housing complex residents now look like a mob on a leash, tagging the property management to step up and fix the mess this snowstorm's been causing them lately. Since reading endless blind text messages is boring as hell, the group chat turns into a metaphorical theme park where all the residents show up as chibi avatars. The angry residents are not thrilled with how things are going. If the snow keeps piling up in front of the exit, they won't even be able to go grocery shopping. They paid a fat chunk of money just to get lousy service. If anything, they want to have a talk with the property agent if management can't make their money worth it. On the other side, the property management team is in a state of panic too, apologizing nonstop for the inconvenience. But a few half-hearted apologies won't ease the frustration weighing on the residents because of the poor management. Honestly, they want refunds. This ain't not worth it. Amid all this chaos is our guy, Hang Fun, who's clearly annoyed watching these residents drain their energy arguing over nonsense. It's not like the complex owner has some magic powers to undo the snowstorm. But not everyone in the complex has given up hope. One resident, Janyu, is mature enough to admit they can't fight a blizzard. His better idea? They should help each other instead of making things harder. Natural disasters are totally out of the property management's control, so blowing off steam on them is pointless. Well, not everyone in the lobby agrees with John's chill attitude. These people are so untamed and short-sighted that instead of working together, they start trashing John for dick-riding the property management. Sheen tries to explain he's not taking anyone's sides. He's just being realistic and objective. It's completely pointless to back property management into a corner when arguing won't get them anywhere. But once again, the crowd refuses to calm down unless the snow outside is cleared so they can shop for groceries. Starving to death isn't exactly their vibe. Sheen does his best to talk sense into this dullard mob. He points out that even if the snow is cleared outside, that doesn't guarantee the roads will be clear too. For what it's worth, he suggests walking to the grocery store on foot, especially since clearing footpaths is way more doable than clearing the roads. Meanwhile, Hang Fun is making this sour face after recognizing the dude who's been preaching left and right like a bootleg guru. The way our boy looks at him, it's clear their history isn't exactly pleasant. Suddenly, a BS-repellent guy with an annoyed face jumps into the chat. No formalities. He just lays it out. If anyone wants to eat, they need to head outside and start clearing the roads. Otherwise, all the gossip won't melt the snow. Then he logs off. Another guy steps up, ready to head down and help clean the mess outside. This blunt Tanj thug seems to be another figure Hang Fong is familiar with. Slowly but surely, the residents start joining the crew to clear the roads. Even the delicate cuties are willing to get their hands dirty for this noble cause. Then there's the unforgettable Hyona, who's also volunteering to help. Hang Fong isn't sure how a like her even agreed to join. Turns out her volunteering is just a ploy to attract all the gooners who don't want a beauty like her to drain herself when men are around. As expected, she milked the moment and dumped her responsibilities on others. What else do you expect from an opportunistic like her? As Hang Fong logs out of the chat, the frustration on his face is obvious. This woman never disappoints when it comes to ruining his mood. Right now, she's actually texting him. Why, you ask? Well, because she knows this desperate gunner would do anything she asks. So, she wants him to bring her food supplies. She even throws in a bonus pic of her bare legs. Thick thighs, barely any clothes, all aimed right at our boy's soul. Hang Fong wants to rate her a solid 10 to 10 for the effort, seducing him with barely their clothes despite the cold. But with his leg broken, Even if he wanted to chase the booty, he can't do squat. So he decides to toss back a teasing remark guaranteed to make her skin crawl. And sure enough, his words do the trick. She's so annoyed she wants to stomp on him. Here's a little throwback to what's been going down. Today marks the third day ever since the blizzard started, with temperatures already dropping below 20 degrees. Since this was just the beginning of the destruction about to unfold, the central heating was still running. The internet was still up and running for everyone's daily dose of distraction. So, just like any bored teenager, Hang Fun did nothing but scroll through TikTok watching those busta ladies making shorts. Though, honestly, he isn't feeling it. In fact, he is already bored. And it's only the second day of the so-called apocalypse. This got him thinking about what loneliness can really do to a man. His broken leg wasn't helping either. Seriously, cramping his style and trapping him in place. And it's going to be at least a few months before he fully recovers. With no other option, he dives back into video after video. That's when he stumbles on something awe-inspiring in a news report. Turns out there's a dude with a crazy ability to heal himself. According to the doctors, this guy fell off the 15th floor, wrecking his internal organs and mangling his bones completely. But not long after, the guy started regenerating, like actually healing himself. Thinking about supernatural powers got Hang Fong remembering he had some tricks up his own sleeve. So, he activated the familiar green light glowing over his hand and tried to heal his broken bone. But the green energy fizzled out without doing a damn thing. He tried again, but nope. Only failure awaited him. After admitting defeat, he slumped back on the couch, disappointed that his hopes had been raised for just a moment. After hours of endless scrolling, he finally started drifting into the dream realm. In his dream, he was rocking some primitive garb riding a massive goat. Not just one goat, a whole freaking flock of goats following him with goat heads flapping as they soared. In this zoomed-out shot, you can see this massive horde following him closely behind. But suddenly, the fun ride screeches to a halt when the goat slammed on the brakes, tossing him off its back. He hurt his leg in the fall, and when the goat starts licking it, he finds this weird act of goat compassion pretty gross and pushes the creature away, which annoys the goat. Then, the goat whipped out its absurdly long tongue, wrapped it around Hang Fong's leg, and jerks it right into the sky. The part of his leg the tongue is wrapped around starts to heal instantly. Right at that moment, Hang Fong woke up in a cold sweat, totally shocked. For real, that bizarre dream messed him up so bad he is literally sweating down to his balls. Suddenly, he notices his leg is glowing with green energy, showing signs of self-repair. Not long after, he carefully unwraps his bandages and gingerly plants his foot on the floor. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt at all. Looks like that green light did help him recover, but only after he fell asleep. To test this wild theory, he grabs a sharp knife in a morbid attempt to hurt himself, hoping to trigger the healing all over again. His hand trembles as he reluctantly slices a small cut on his index finger. While he is testing his newfound ability, let's cut back outside. There, the angry mob of residents is finally putting their energy to good use. Thanks to their combined efforts, they cleared the path in front of the main gate. All credit goes to Jang for his unity pep talk that got everyone moving. Jang then gives extra props to an old man who had worked the hardest of all. The old man in turn praises the twins who've been grinding just as hard. Then there is everyone's favorite busted nurse, Jingyan, struggling to walk on the slippery snow. The twins spot the damsel in distress and lend a hand to help her up. After that, the twins decide to get back to work in order to clear the path further, telling her to call if she needs more help. Jenong notices the snowfall is getting heavier, so he urges everyone to make their grocery run a quick dash in order to get back as soon as possible. Speaking of supplies, the old man suddenly remembers something, but he didn't think it's worth bringing up until Jang insisted. The old man reveals a rumor from a few days ago. Apparently, a resident had been spotted bringing supplies on a small truck, acting like he was just moving in. Well, Yoon doesn't think much of it. It's pretty normal for someone new to haul their stuff when moving into an apartment. But then the old man adds an interesting detail. He had noticed the guy had gas tanks and a fireplace with him. That certainly doesn't sound like normal moving and stuff. It seemed like this person was prepping hardcore to survive the winter. Before they can mull it over any further, the twins return with a progress report. Suddenly, a guy appears out of nowhere, clearly eavesdropping on the old man's story and eager to learn more about this person who was prepping to survive the winter in advance. But this curious guy quickly gets smacked with a snowball from Lu Yen, who wants him to stop slacking and get back to work. Jang then steps in to stop the arguing and tells everyone to move out since the main path is clear. Nurse Jin is also hyped to go shopping. Meanwhile, the old man asks Jang for his opinion, wondering if this new resident already knew about the blizzard coming. Jang thinks for a second, then dodges the question carefully. He claims that the blizzard will blow over soon, so no need to worry. Worst case, if the storm doesn't stop, they're lucky to have a neighbor stocked with supplies to help everyone survive it. So, it's actually a good thing. As their journey to the store continues, the snowstorm intensifies, pushing everyone to move faster. Meanwhile, our lazy boy Hang Fong is still knocked out in his cozy apartment, but his nap gets interrupted by a knock at the door. There's this familiar voice calling him out. When he opens it, the visitor turns out to be homeless Joe, holding the fine stuff our guy had requested. This was the promised gift from Boss Lou. Brother Lee had agreed to bring it, because he had stocked up on supplies beforehand, and could now afford not to run around the city like crazy looking for supplies like most of the other citizens. But even so, Han Feng was grateful to him for coming in this weather. Brother Lee also had some very interesting information that various rumors had already started to spread about. Last night, some unknown person had cleaned out the shelves of a supermarket in the Eastern District. And when the Boss Lou gang cleared their way out of the snow yesterday, they were met with nothing but emptiness in the supermarket. To Han Feng, something like this seemed unbelievable, to completely clean out a huge supermarket in one night. Who could be capable of such a thing? However, there was no doubt in Brother Lee's words, and it had definitely happened. Han Feng was now beginning to realize that something even stranger than in his previous life was happening around him. It looked like he wasn't the only one who had gained superpowers. For a second, his thoughts were interrupted by Brother Lee. He advised Han Feng to wear more warm clothes and be careful. After that, he said goodbye and left. Finally, our hero could be alone and think things over. He kept trying to think of a logical explanation for what had happened last night. How could someone clean out a supermarket in one night? The only explanation he could think of was the theory that it could have been done by someone with superpowers from novels and comic books. Someone capable of hiding unlimited amounts of supplies in his personal subspace. The only question was, could people with such abilities exist in this world? And the answer to that question was quite simple. Since he himself had superpowers, someone else could too. This was a disturbing discovery. Now, Han Feng couldn't waste a moment. He needed to examine his superpowers more thoroughly, so that when he encountered other superpower holders, he would have his own strategy to counter them. He simply had to know his strengths and weaknesses as well as the limit of his superpowers. To do so, he opened his diary and began to study the already known facts about his powers. At this point, he already knew that his power could react with different foods, both plant and animal. With its help, he could quickly grow them, increase their volume, and also fry them, though with a terrible taste. But still, unfortunately, there were limitations which he learned about later. The likelihood of success of power application is not that great and differs for different products. For example, for soybeans, the chance of growing a plant is 10%. For meat, it's even less. Han Feng kept failing to understand why things worked the way they did. Suddenly, the soybean under the influence of the force exploded in his hand with an unpleasant green cloud. And instead of a normal plant, our hero had a rock in his hand, just a stinky rock. This was starting to annoy him. The failure rate was too high. Han Feng had to learn how to use his power more effectively, and he was determined to start practicing hard. After all, nothing helps you learn any skill faster than practice. For this purpose, he spared no time and worked hard until late in the evening. Finally, he succeeded. In his hands, Han Feng had a fresh and alive soybean plant with pods. Such an achievement did not come easy to him. He was sweating profusely and was already quite a good heater for his apartment. But that was the price he had to pay to figure out a few rules to increase the success rate. He found out that green light energy is not constant, and for different products, it is worth applying this green light for different lengths of time depending on the nutritional value of the product. If you do not guess the duration of application, you will end up with a failure and get a burnt stinky stone. That is, you need to know exactly the ideal cooking interval for each product. This brings to mind Han Feng, something familiar, one popular music and dance online game that came out a decade ago, where you had to press the right buttons in rhythm at the right interval. It was also conceivable that the value of energy could be compared to the directions up, down, right, and left, and the value of the energy input to the object had to be correct every second, and eventually a critical point had to be caught, and the process had to be stopped. If you do it right, you'll achieve success, and every soybean will become a plant. After the success with plants, Han Feng began experimenting with meat, obviously, but meat was different from vegetables. If you did something wrong in the process, the meat would then turn into a disgusting black slurry. However, the principles in turning meat were still supposed to be similar. The first place to start was to determine how much energy the meat needed. Everything seemed to be working and going according to plan. But here's the problem. The chicken leg exploded, just like the previous ones, with a nasty black slurry. It looked like it would take him even longer to learn how to work with meat than with plant food. Time after time, Han Feng tried and failed. The chicken legs exploded one after another. There seemed to be no end to this series of failures. Finally, our hero's patience ran out. He even cried out in despair, cursing this damn ability with an increased level of difficulty. However, the hero was not one to give up. And while the snowfall outside the window only intensified and the temperature dropped even lower, Han Feng did not stop trying. Traces of it were all over the kitchen. And then came the moment of truth, the last chicken leg. Our hero was already doing everything on automatic with an absent expression on his face and did not even hope for success. Up and down, left and right, red and green energy. It felt like an overly complicated mini-scale game to him. It was repeated one after another. And as soon as he made a mistake, he had to start all over again. The tension was at an all-time high. And this time, Han Feng succeeded. He managed to grow the chicken leg to a gigantic size. With a snore of disdain, our hero said that it was worth it and collapsed exhausted but happy on the floor. He had finally found a way to synthesize meat. The weather outside was getting worse by the day. The news announced that today, July 17th, was the third consecutive day of snow disaster. In every corner of the country, the same thing is happening. And it seems that mankind is facing a disaster that happens only once in a few thousand years. In order to ensure the basic livelihood of citizens, the authorities are actively fighting the consequences and taking measures to help citizens. It was to such news that Han Feng woke up the next day. How many times had he heard it before? Empty warnings and promises about how the heavy snowfall had paralyzed transportation, electricity, and internet. But everything would be repaired soon, and all they needed to do was wait a little longer. Soon, humanitarian supplies should arrive in the disaster areas. Finally, the news anchor advised everyone to stay indoors and not to go outside unnecessarily. For Han Feng, there was nothing surprising in all of this. He had heard all of this in his past life. Suddenly, a notification came on his phone, followed instantly by several more. Han Feng immediately saw that it was a group of residents of his house who had started making noise again, and he simply couldn't help but join in the discussion. The noise around was unbelievable. Everyone was discussing the morning news. Some believed that the rescuers would come and help them. Others thought it was all empty promises and made plans to save themselves. Only one avatar stood out from the crowd and asked the gullible if they really believed what was being said on the news. It was old Uncle Lou, and he absolutely did not believe what was being said on TV. If everything was under the control of the government, the rescue teams would have arrived long ago. Instead, he had heard rumors from old friends that the government was assembling armored vehicles, tanks, and other heavy weapons in City A, the capital of the country. They were probably preparing for the war that is about to break out. After hearing the very real possibility of an all-out war against an unknown enemy, a chilling silence swept through the group chat full of paranoid survivors. Then came the eruption of concerns, asking Uncle Lou if what he said was true. If it was, weren't they basically done for? Meanwhile, Han Feng was just fascinated by the coming up of the issue of war. He had heard something about this progression in his previous life. Mr. Zhang interjected to quiet all the noise. He asserted that if what Uncle Lou said was true, then they had to start taking survival measures to save everyone. Some owners in the neighborhood had already run out of supplies. With support resources from the government still uncertain, he proposed organizing for those who were facing difficulties. He passionately suggested that those with ample supplies donate some of their stash. To serve as an example, Mr. Zhang pledged to donate half of his supplies to anyone in need. Other owners quickly discussed what was being put forward in hushed tones. One guy wholeheartedly agreed with Mr. Zhang and LT, Unk and GT, as proposal as everyone was just trying to get through the crisis. He pledged to donate what he could and even roped in Lai Heiona. She knew this crazy guy Wu Kuanyu. That man was trying to humiliate her in front of everyone just because she rejected him before. So Lai Heiona had to play some defense, bringing out her meek girl persona while apologizing as she didn't have any spare supplies left. Most of her simps immediately jumped to defend the witch. This little commotion almost made the plan to organize impossible, as they couldn't even unite themselves with selfless acts. But donations eventually started pouring in. A lot of people must have been moved by Mr. Zhang's impassioned speech. Food, clothing, medicine, all the necessities were put forth. Mr. Zhang expressed his gratitude to those who were willing to help. Since there were quite a lot of people to manage, he thought it wise to appoint some owners to take charge of the operation. He would naturally lead the team. It would be an interim emergency committee responsible for planning and distributing donated supplies. Han Feng smirked as soon as he read the announcement. This interim committee thing happened in his previous life too. Sometime later, it would be revealed that it was all a scheme to take other people's resources. Today was the 19th of July, the 5th day of the apocalypse. Temperatures outside had already dropped to minus 40 degrees. Now was finally the day when the building's central heating system was no longer running due to the extreme frost. Everyone was desperately thinking and trying ways to keep their bodies warm without the convenience of heaters. Some managed to make a tiny fire inside their homes. It was the same as the previous timeline. It was terrible now, but the situation would only continue to get worse. The exception to this was our MC, of course. Hanfeng was set with all his failed experimental charcoals, perfect for fueling his fireplace. On the table was a fizzy iced cola and a scrumptious slice of strawberry cake. As for Hanfeng himself, he was doing what most of us would do in his situation, playing single-player video games while not giving a damn about the outside world, but his peace would be interrupted by a sudden phone call. Taking a break from gaming, he picked up the call while sipping on Coke. On the line was the person in charge of Block 8. They planned to clear the roads in 20 minutes and were in need of manpower in the basement car park. Hanfeng resisted cursing this random guy out. These people still didn't get it yet. The snow wouldn't stop piling up. Against his will, Hanfeng still chooses to leave the comfort of his home and go down to the main lobby. He reckoned falling out with the neighbors would be troublesome now. He must lower the possibility of his secret being discovered after all. From the first look at the gate, everyone could see the snow had already trapped them in the building. Other volunteers were pissed that the paths they had cleared before had been erased with the highest snow pile they'd ever seen. Deciding to at least get the door open, the volunteers saw Hanfeng and called him over to help with opening the entrance. They placed their whole body weights into the door and pushed at the count of 3. Much to everyone's surprise, opening the entrance let in copious amounts of snow and opened the lobby up to the frigidity of a raging snowstorm. The storm was too extreme, and none of them could take the cold. When you get close enough to the storm, even opening your eyes could become a possible injury. Hanfeng regretted leaving his cozy couch to subject himself to manual labor and frostbite. If people went out in that weather, death wouldn't be far-fetched. Thankfully, the rest of the volunteers also came to the same realization. Only an idiot would try to go out in that temperature. Speaking of idiots, he was finally here. A voice that sounded all too familiar in Hanfeng's ear. It was none other than Homeless Joe, also known as Brother Lee. He was roasting everyone for acting like cowards when they needed to be imposing at tough times like this. The volunteers shivered in their boots while trying to talk Brother Lee out of his stupidity. No one should go out in the harshness of that snowstorm. Brother Lee was built different, though. First, he finished a cigarette he was smoking in one puff. Pumped to go in like the madman that he was, Brother Lee plowed through the snow, trapping everyone in with his hands. The dumbass started chanting like an anime character while literally punching the snow, scattering the pile all over the place. He continued doing this for a while. He even managed to dig a Homeless Joe-sized hole in the middle of the human-length pile of snow. Then came a silence. After a few moments, all the volunteers could hear were garbled pleadings for help coming from under the snow pile. The others had to drag Homeless Joe out of the snow. His face looked purple from the cold and being trapped under the heavy snow. Volunteers finally decided that venturing outside was impossible and closed the gate. Hanfeng ran up to Brother Lee, trying to make sure that the stupid gangster was all right. He asked everyone to go to the car park first so they could look for the person in charge of attendance. They could always decide what to do next when the snow stopped. With such a severe blizzard rampaging throughout the world, people were no longer in a situation where the problem could be solved with manpower. In the building's car park, it seemed like the atmosphere was a little more comfortable on account of it being underground. Mr. Zhang, the de-acto leader, was surrounded by the owners as always. Upon receiving reports from the lobby, he concurred that the clearing operation should take a pause. Also, from now on, the basement car park will be the designated donation and collection point. Hanfeng stayed low-key in the background. This was the first time he had met that guy with the surname Zhang from the group chat. This meant that this was the guy who had spearheaded the establishment of that eventual scam committee. With his kind and well-spoken demeanor, Mr. Zhang would manipulate everyone with politeness and the illusion of support and unity. Mr. Zhang commented about the overwhelming downpour of donations from so many owners. These generous donations would help those who were struggling, and for that he was grateful. The general vibe in the car park was quite positive. People were feeling good about their selfless acts. It gave them a false sense of unity as they worked on the same goal of survival. Hanfeng knew something they didn't, though. They just had to wait and see. As the disaster continued to go on for an eternity, they would soon regret giving up their resources. Brother Lee, still shivering from the stunt he tried to pull earlier, decided to head up first and say goodbye to Hanfeng. Looking around the car park, Hanfeng noticed someone eye-catching. It was that airhead nurse that he had met in the hospital when he broke his leg. She was wearing some type of cute winter onesie while clumsily carrying a stack of boxes. She was clearly struggling to navigate her way through the crowd of people standing around the committee. Given her awkwardness, she eventually bumped into some of the guys standing around. She would have slipped straight to the floor if it hadn't been for Hanfang swooping in to save the day once again. While holding her in her box, he asked if the blushing nurse was okay. When she finally opened her eyes, she expressed her thanks for the save and eventually recognized Hanfang from the hospital. Then she remembered that his leg was supposed to be severely injured. He shouldn't be in the condition to catch falling maidens. Realizing that he acted before thinking about the current situation, Hanfang struggled to think of a way out. He stumbled over his words before getting out that his speed of recovery had always been great since he was young. It was very unconvincing with all the nervous gestures. Fortunately, the nurse was too dense to gather any kind of untruthfulness from his words and actions. She just found his recovery speed to be fantastic. Hanfang offered to help lift her boxes. She declined at first, saying that they were heavy, but our boy insisted. It took a little bit of convincing, but she eventually entrusted the boxes to him. As soon as he got both hands on the supplies, he was flabbergasted by how heavy they actually were. They were unnaturally weighty. Curious, he asked her what was inside. She explained that these were mainly medical supplies that she was donating to those in need. She also acknowledged that it might be a little too heavy and that she would be fine carrying them to the donation point. Entranced by her beauty and kindness, you could give Hanfang a few more pounds to carry, and he would never complain. Since she claimed to be stronger than most guys, the nurse kept reminding him not to push too hard. When asked if she'd always been strong since she was young, she became a little guarded while answering that there was a reason behind it all. Hearing those cryptic words made Hanfang naturally curious, but she looked uncomfortable telling the story and apologized for bringing it up. It's just that something happened recently that she can't quite explain. Also, they've been talking and walking for a while now, and she still didn't know his name. Hanfang politely introduced himself in turn. The angelic nurse also dropped her name, Jean Shu. Based on her big smile, it seemed like she really appreciated this unexpected meeting. He was speechless whenever he saw that smile. He would have been in, but Nurse Jin asked what he does, and he truthfully answered that he was unemployed. Talk about fumbling a baddie, so close to the finish line, my boy. But thanks to manual logic, an impatient man just happened to pass by, knocking Nurse Jin off balance. Struggling to maintain her balance, she eventually fell on Hanfang. He was the only one she could grab to stabilize. This also led to her soft breasts pressing into Hanfang's arm all of a sudden. Having zero riz, Hanfang just stood there and savored the moment. Nurse Jin immediately pulled away and apologized while Hanfang tried to say that it was no problem. This would have been a perfect first meeting if it hadn't been for Lai Hyona rearing her ugly head to approach Hanfang like a sleepless zombie. You could see the effects of hunger and cold taking a toll on her. Like the parasite that she is, the witch immediately pounced on Hanfang, deliberately rubbing her chest against his arm. Grabbing him slowly, she asked who the pink-haired lady was and if she was a friend. Nurse Jin immediately felt awkward and grabbed the box supplies away from Hanfang's hands. She just wanted to get her donations logged and not interrupt two friends chatting. Hanfang asked why Hona was down here, while he regrettably watched Nurse Jin scurry her way to the donation point. The witch explained that she came to get some supplies, noting that she was worried about Hanfang given his inactivity. He scratched his head and told her that he was just about to send a message. She called him a liar, seeing as he was happily chatting away with another lady just now. Then came the inquiries about whether he had any spare food supplies at home. She claimed that she was almost out of food and was wondering if she could share some Hanfang's. He didn't get pissed off or anything like that. On the contrary, he smirked. Continuing his simp act, Hanfang claimed that he didn't have much food left either, but could spare some to share, but he'd only share food with people who reply to messages. Acting forward, he grabbed the witch by the waist and asked if she would be willing to accompany him to his place for a few days. Not used to the more confident version of her supposed simp, the witch lost her composure for a second. She pushed him away and smiled. Lai Hyona insisted that if Hanfang wanted to chat, they could just do so online. Taking that as a flat-out rejection, Hanfang turned back to head up to his place. Being in a very desperate situation, the witch grabbed him before he could get far, telling him to wait up. She asserted that he had changed quite a bit recently. Hyona also claimed that she had always been very serious about her feelings. With the most convincing puppy eyes imaginable, Hyona professed that she didn't want people to think that she was just with Hanfang for his money. So, she's going to need a little more time for something more serious. Hanfang looked at her act with a blush on his face. Thankfully, he checked himself immediately. If he hadn't already died once by her hands, he would have believed those words. But right now, he just wanted to tear her ugly mask off. The thing is, he still hadn't found out who the man behind the witch was. Thinking about it now, why would he even go look for the guy when he could just act and proceed like he did in his previous life until Hyona naturally brought the man over? This time he'll be more prepared. Sure, they have a steel bat, but Han Fong has a sniper rifle. Realizing this, he decided not to rock the boat too much and joked that he was just teasing her. Now, the witch was feeling a little ashamed of putting on another acting masterclass for a joke. Still, Han Fong asserted that he would wait for her message so he could deliver some food supplies the next day. With this, they finally bade each other goodbye. She even told him to hit her up if there was anything he wanted to talk about. As the witch exited the car park, an evil smile crept up at the corners of her vile mouth. Unbeknownst to her, Han Fong wasn't the one being played this time around. He really liked tormenting her on the low-key. 2 days passed without Han Fong contacting the witch. This turned into Lai Hyona blowing up his phone with angry text messages about the delivery of the promised supplies. Han Fong was just letting all the salty messages pile in while he ate a piping hot steak meal paired with some fizzy drink. How good would it be to eat some good food while tormenting a witch who killed you in the previous life? Finally figuring out the method to make some blissfully delicious meat was a game share. The cold weather outside was perfect for such nice and warm food inside. While everyone was miserable in the cold, this guy was actually sweating it out in his bathrobe. Absolute Chad. He hadn't been just lounging around these past few days either. He conducted numerous experiments that allowed him to confirm 2 important things. First, his meat could not be expanded limitlessly. Second, just like soybeans, meat could be reproduced without a limit. His experiments had already yielded pounds and pounds of it. For every full stock of beans sprouted, he would use half to grow more beans and eat the other half. He could freely apply the same principle to meat. Under the red and green light, half a steak and a handful of soybeans could produce a whole piece of steak. Exploiting the same process over and over would yield an unlimited amount of steak. After conducting numerous tests to put this hypothesis to the test, he concluded that he wouldn't have to worry about eating good food in the future. Some TV stations were still sending out reporters to chronicle the unprecedented snowstorm on its 19th day. It was August 2nd now, and even the picturesque islands of the Maldives near the equator had reached average temperatures of minus 42 degrees. The entire island had been engulfed by ice and snow. Even the ocean was freezing at a speed observable to the naked eye. It was unreal. According to expert readings, the ice layer had reached 55 centimeters deep. Similar situations could be observed in other countries near the equator, the supposed warm territories. Watching through his massive entertainment center, Han Feng scoffed at the news coverage. In reality, the situation in the outside world was far worse than the media's portrayal. He was peacefully sipping on his daily red wine when a sudden noise from outside sent a shock to his system. Han Feng hurriedly made his way to the window and opened the curtains. He could see a building engulfed in fire from a distance. This was the 7th explosion incident in the past few days. Even Han Feng was clueless about the cause. But what was certain was that this was not a good sign. There had been a ramp up in the number of military helicopters flying through the city, too. If he was clueless, so were the rest of the survivors. The situation outside was causing panic among the residents. All of them were basically camping around the basement car park to trade for goods and food supplies. Human greed knows no limits. So there were many residents taking advantage of others, leading to several conflicts and altercations. At the center of all this was Mr. Zhang, who was still playing the role of the reliable leader who provided necessary resources to the destitute for free. Today was a special day as Han Feng decided to go down to the basement car park with the other survivors. He'd only been out of his place for a few minutes, and the cold was already getting to him. Every time he exited the comfort of his home, he regretted his decision. The real reason he came down was to gather some useful information. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't have shown his face to these people ever again. Before he was given the chance to reset, he remembered a rebellion sweeping through the neighborhood. If memory served him right, it should be related to the people in this basement. Right now, they were still standing by their promise to give away resources instead of outright scamming people. To find out what was really going on, Han Feng decided to do some detective work on this messy and chaotic gathering. Based on the long lines in the collection area, it looked like the number of households facing shortages was relatively high. At the front of the line, a man was complaining about how few resources he was getting when he had donated several large boxes of supplies, while Mr. Zhang insisted that everyone was given an equal slice. With a single canned good and one sausage in hand, the man demanded his donated resources back. But the committee couldn't really do that. Since the disaster was ongoing, Mr. Zhang urged the man to look at the bigger picture and promised to pay back the man in cash several times over once things settled down. But a promise of money for an uncertain tomorrow wasn't worth anything right now. Finally, other people in the line started speaking up against the whiny man. They'd bashed the guy, telling him to stop being so shameless and move along. It didn't take too long for a mob to form around the idea of hating this shameless man who just wanted a few more supplies for his family. They were thoroughly under the influence of the interim committee. Hanfang knew all too well that there was no way for the people in charge to concede their resources in this current situation. But placing yourself on higher moral ground against those who've donated more resources at the start of the crisis was equally shameless. Speaking of shameless, the man, the myth, the legend finally made another appearance in the basement. It was none other than Homeless Joe. Brother Lee. He looked a lot worse than a few days ago. He looked frail, sickly, and thin. It had been a while since the Gun brothers had seen each other. Brother Lee claimed that he wasn't doing too badly, but it was clear that he was. According to him, he was just trembling from being flustered and powerless, not to mention the cold. He was far from doing not too bad. Brother Lee finally admitted that he had been having a difficult time just depending on drinking water to suppress his hunger, as he didn't have any food left. When the donation drive was in full swing, he donated most of his resources to the committee. In the end, his own supply ran out before the promised end of the snowstorm. In addition, the rations that the committee doled out were too little. If Brother Lee had only known how bad the weather would be, he would have kept more of his personal stash. Realizing that he had a possible solution for Brother Lee's plight, Hanfeng pulled the gangster closer to whisper a favor. Brother Lee pulled away in disbelief. Little Hanfeng just offered him 4 packs of instant noodles and 2 sausages to do a simple job. Hanfeng made a point of asserting that this would put a significant dent in his supplies. The gangster took it as his little bro was looking for an excuse to give him food. He was moved to tears, promising to remember his goodwill for the rest of time. Brother Lee grabbed Hanfeng with sincere intensity and assured him that this small matter would be settled without a fuss. As for the food, he could just swing by Hanfeng's house later. But first, Brother Lee really needed something to fill his stomach, so he lined up to get some rations. Hanfeng was just pleased with the perfect deal he cooked up. With just a few packs of noodles and sausages, he wouldn't have to come down here personally to gather information in the future. He felt a little sorry for Brother Lee, but sticking his nose into other people's business wasn't as important as comfortably lazing on his sofa, eating delicious food, and playing games. Hanfeng would have had a perfect journey in the basement car park if he hadn't been spotted by yet another familiar face. After hearing his name, the next thing he saw was a palm heading for his face. Lee Hyona's version of hello for today was a crisp slap across Hanfeng's cheek. Not expecting to get assaulted so early in the day, he didn't know how to react to this absurd scenario. With anger in her eyes, Hona told Hanfeng that he had been a disappointment. The broke proceeded to yell at him for not responding to her messages asking for food. She made sure to raise her voice so everyone in the car park could hear. Hanfeng was stun-locked. He just stood there trying to process what was happening. The witch he had been messing with just slapped him across the face in front of everyone. He hadn't even settled her previous life debts yet. Now she's coming into his space and slapping him for no reason. This was blasphemous at this point. With his anger rising at an alarming rate, he reckoned that Lee Hyona still saw him as that pathetic wimp, easy to bully. He remained silent for a few moments as she berated him for not responding. She called him deaf and mute and demanded an answer to her questions. Hanfeng took a deep breath, the cold smoking up the air. Then he proceeded to put on another act, sincerely apologizing to Hyona. He explained that his supplies were stolen. He had placed the food he was about to deliver outside his door for a quick second to get his keys, but the boxes of supplies were gone by the time he returned. Hanfeng claimed that he tried to look for the culprit, but hadn't found any clues at all. At this point, she looked like a crackhead, desperate for her next hit, as she asked him if he still had some resources left tucked away. He answered that he didn't have much, only enough to last him a few days if rationed to 1 meal a day. Hearing that he still had some food left, Hyona's unhinged face lit up with a blushing smile. She was back to her sweet girl act, and the transition was flawless. But when she asked Hanfeng to split half of his food and just eat 1 meal every 2 days so they could both get through the disaster together, she looked unhinged. Hanfeng could barely stand how shameless this woman could be. To be capable of saying such selfish words without batting, and I was terrifying. Well, in her eyes, this man was still just a tool to use when needed and nothing more. Letting her continue thinking that way, Hanfeng smiled and lovingly concurred with the plan. He acted like a man who would stand by his promises and split his supplies equally with some girl. She even demanded to get the food now, but he scheduled the delivery for the night, insisting that he had some packing to do. She teased him that she'd be waiting for the message tonight. Heading back first, Hona wished him well and hoped he wouldn't catch the flu going around. Hanfeng boded her farewell as well, a sinister plan already brewing in his petty mind. As early as 8 o'clock in the evening, Lai Hyona was already badgering Hanfeng for the food. She grew so impatient that she even went to the lobby near his room at around 9:30. She was shivering in the halls, alone, cold, and miserable. Hanfeng was back to his favorite hobby, hooking Hyona with bait, then completely ghosting her with texts and calls. The elevator was busted after weeks of cold without maintenance. So, if she really wanted to cause a scene, she'd have to take the stairs up to Han Fang's unit. Seeing no other choice, Lee Hyona swallowed her pride and took the creepy staircase. Halfway through the climb, she was already exhausted with the cold, making her shiver. It was a hellish ordeal. If it weren't for the supplies, she wouldn't be doing all this. The exhaustion kept piling on as she had been starving for a few days now. Each step up the stairs took all the strength she had left. You gotta give it to her. There are very few people who would climb more than 16 floors just to leech off someone's food. Coincidentally, even the emergency lights on the higher floors were also busted. This just made her climb darker and spookier. Upon hearing what she perceived as some kind of eerie sound, Lee Hyona anxiously asked who was there. To answer her inquiry, a black plastic bag came directly from the higher floors, on track to land on her pretty little head. Shocked and unable to move, Hyona was forced to just stand there and wait for the black bag to hit her. As soon as the bag landed with a loud bang, the emergency lights kicked back on and white dust filled the staircase. The always cheerful and smiling Lee Hyona was blasted with flour all over her head and body. In front of her was Han Fang. He claimed that he fell asleep and immediately came running down with the supplies when he saw her messages. When the light turned off, he accidentally dropped the bag of flour, leading to this situation. Wiping off the flour and plastic from her hair and coat, Hyona felt disgusting as hints of her real nasty personality peeked through the mask. Han Fang was quite pleased with this sight. He had specially prepared this mean-spirited prank for her, and it wasn't done yet. He lifted another plastic bag, telling the witch that he packed up his remaining resources for her. Upon inspection, she noticed that most of the food and produce were already moldy. It looked more like trash than edible food. Playing the fool, Han Fang scratched the back of his head and claimed that he worked extra hard to keep these leftovers in stock. There was even rotting meat mixed in there. Then he expertly pivoted to acting offended, grabbing the plastic bag and telling her to give it back if she didn't like it. Afraid of starving for another day, the witch hurriedly grabbed the bag away, claiming that she wanted it. Han Fang looked at her carefully from head to toe. He scoffed at himself. In front of him was the so-called goddess he had been pursuing with all his might before. Right now, she looked like a homeless crackhead stuck outside on a winter night. She